Previously on Break the Cycles. Almost 2 months have passed, and I'm now in Southern California. While I have a bunch of places I wanted to visit, I also have a ton of relatives I need to see. All my relatives are in California somewhere, or half of my relatives are. In addition, I also have to follow up with Leroy when I get to Orange County. After leaving my aunt in Visalia, I headed to Tom's place in Lancaster. Now, Tom and I have been friends since middle school, and he just happened to be in California, in Lancaster, for his job at that time. So he invited me to stay with him and his roommate Red. And then I got there. The next day, I just took a break, did laundry, get my stuff together. And then I got out the day after, rode down to Marina Del Rey to see my aunt. Unfortunately, my cousins weren't there, so my aunt was like, "You got to stay with us for a few days and come back whenever you're coming down this way." So I was like, "Okay." When I got back, against my protest, Tom ordered me a new windshield for my bike. And I told him I didn't want it because I kind of like the epoxy together windshield because it did look very ugly. He's not wrong about that. But it's also kind of like a battle scar, but more importantly, it was kind of like a theft deterrent because like a fresh brand new windshield just look to make the front of the bike look really nice. And that cracked windshield just make it look like nobody wants to touch your bike. Um, but I installed it anyway because he already ordered it, and I asked him to ship my old glued together windshield back because I kind of want to keep it. The next day, I headed towards Reward Mine, and this is like an abandoned mine that you can like ride into, and this is a very popular Jeep spot. So I was pretty excited to go there. There was a town called Lone Pine on the way there. It was like a chic small town. It was very desert cowboy vibe to it. Even the McDonald had like the same theme. It was pretty cool. And then I followed my way to the Reward Mine path, and then there's an abandoned airport that's kind of on the way that you get to ride. It's very nice. You don't. It's not every day you find like an empty runway that you can just like blast up and down the runway. After the airport, I rode towards Reward Mine on a single lane dirt road, and no more than 5 minutes into the road, I saw this tiny little thing that runs across the, and I was like, "What is that?" And they're like, "Oh my god, it's a Roadrunner!" I have never seen a Roadrunner in person. I only seen him in cartoons, so it's such a exciting like thing to see. I was like, "Oh my god, it's so cool!" And then the dirt road finally comes to an end about 15 miles into the desert, and it became much steeper and rockier. I was skidding along quite a bit on the road, and the gravel got much looser and bigger as you get closer to the entrance of the mine, and the climb was just pretty steep. The final couple hundred yards going up into the mine, but I did make it without too much drama. It was a super hot day, and this is like in the middle of the desert, right? So it's super hot, but when you get to the mine entrance, you get hit by this cold breeze coming from the inside of the mine. And it is very questionable air quality because it's got this like stale air smell that's coming out of it. And I contemplated like, is this safe, like health wise, to inhale this and then going in there? But since I'm already there, I went in anyways. So I headed into the mine, and just past the entrance, it goes full dark. Since there's literally no light coming in from anywhere, so the only light that you see is the headlight on the bike. And it is very creepy. I turned my head a few times, like back to look, and like you see literally nothing. Like it's just completely black. And I can squeeze the brake light, and then I can see like maybe like 20 feet behind me. But it's kind of like a tunnel, so like you can't really see that far before the tunnel turns. So it was very creepy. About a mile in, I decided, well, I had enough because there's nothing to see, and it's literally the same thing. You just kind of keep going in. So I tried to turn around, and without having any visual cues, because you can't see anything, it was really messing up my orientation. So I no idea as I was turning halfway there, like I didn't know which direction I was, and I got confused, and then I just dumped my bike in the dark, which made it even worse because now I'm really disoriented, and now I'm thinking like, okay, which direction is the bike facing? When I pull it up, like, okay, so like there was no danger of any kind per se, but my adrenaline just shot through the roof. I picked the bike up instantly and I turned the headlight back on. And then I have no idea which way is out because it all looks the same. My only orientation was that the cold air was coming in, well, coming out of the mine. So then I felt the air coming at one way. I was like, okay, so that's probably going further into the mine. So then I pointed my bike in the direction that the wind is going. So once I got the bike straightened out, I calmed down. I put the bike on the side stand, took some photos. I even turned everything off and just used my flashlight on the ground to make some photos. Bold, I know. It was very odd when I was coming out. There's literally no sense of distance because there's no reference point. It's completely dark. You're just riding. The only thing you see is like a little bit of road in front of you with the headlights pointing, right? So you're just kind of riding, and you're just like, oh, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going, right? And part of me was kind of wondering, did I go the right direction? Because even though my logic tells me it is the right direction because the wind's coming this way, you don't really know, and you're riding in the dark for, you know, a minute or two, and you're just like worried maybe I made the wrong call, and now I'm like further in. Now I'm really lost. Yeah, but finally I see the light on the entrance, and I got out. I was like, oh, thank goodness. The second I got to the entrance, the temperature jumped at least 20 degrees. Now, the second you step out into the sun from the shade, well, it's like 100 plus degrees. So it's super hot. So the return trip was pretty straightforward, and I rode back to Lancaster. Following day, I took another break day, didn't go anywhere. And our final day with Tom, we did our farewell meal at this motorcycle restaurant called Rock Inn. It was all right. I wouldn't go again. The next day, I leave for LA and I go to my cousin's place. Cousin slash aunt. I decided to take the scenic road and ride the Snake on Mulholland Drive. Now, the Snake is a very popular YouTube place where people crash coming up and down the switchback turn. There's one turn coming up the switchback. The problem is, this turn was literally the only good part of this whole road. I rode down for about 5 miles and turned around because there wasn't anything else after the turn. And it really reminded me when I went up to Hawk's Nest. This is like in the Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey border. There's this road called Hawk's Nest. And just like the photo, it is fantastic looking at this section and only this section. And everything else afterwards was pretty, vanilla. So it was pretty lame. Afterwards, I followed the road south to Santa Monica and rode along the ocean side until I reached downtown LA. Now, the Southern California coastline, it is just superb. Absolutely superb. So beautiful. The following day, I spent it with my aunt and cousin, mostly just going out eating. And then I left the next day and headed to my friend's Mick's place. Now, Mick suggested that we take this group ride where a bunch of motorcycle influencers are going to a party in this seedy motel in the middle of the desert. Now, it already sounds really lame, but I was like, okay, whatever. It's new to me. Let me just go. So on the way there, we stopped by a Chaparro Motorsport, which is the biggest motorcycle store, warehouse, front I have ever seen. Now the motorcycle culture here is just so much bigger than the East Coast, and because they have year-round good weather, a lot of places to ride, and like this store was just like massive. Super jealous. Afterwards, we rode up to Palm Spring, and I learned proper lane splitting from the locals, which is basically recklessly riding, snaking through traffic. The desert wasn't that far, but it felt very, very far with how hot it was, and we're just riding in a straight line. And the town was pretty cool. When we got there, they got palm trees lining on both sides of the boulevard. But it was evident that this place have seen better days. Finally, we arrived in Palm Spring. We got a place to stay that was not in the motel where the party is happening, but it was walking distance to it. Now, the motel where the party is happening is an absolute dump. And it literally is a bunch of people sitting, hanging out by a dirty pool with the music blasting in the middle of the desert in a shitty half abandoned town. I honestly could not get out of there fast enough. It is literally as lame as it sounds. Next morning, we got up pretty early and rode around the area. There was some cool spots with natural springs, but we didn't stop for very long. And then we headed back to LA. Now, back in LA, Mick and I decided to do a tour of the famous, infamous Skid Row. And this is where all the homeless people took over this in several city blocks, and the city just let it be taken over. Every street corner you can see drug addicts, dealers, trash, human feces are everywhere. These people camp out here year round and just use the streets as public toilet. It is freaking disgusting. And this was before COVID too. I don't know how it is now. We were just on the outside of Skid Row once we got out, and we decided that since like it completely changed when we left Skid Row, and then we stopped at a grocery store. Like we needed something to drink and some snacks, so we went to the grocery store, came out, and we was throwing some of the trash away. We found a giant Ziploc bag full of drugs just sitting on the trash can. So Mick decided to take it to the nearest Popo, and then it's very close. Like you literally come around the corner, and there's the police there. And the police didn't want anything to do with it. So we just literally just threw it in the trash, the next trash can that we found. After I left Mick, it was after dinner, and I headed to Orange County to meet Leroy. At around 10 p.m., I met Leroy at his work, and he took me around town. I don't really like to do much night riding because my night vision is not the greatest. We rode it, but I honestly didn't notice because we rode about an hour, and it was just so nice. The weather was just so nice. I just didn't even notice that, it was like, my vision was not good. So finally we stopped, and he took me to his parents' place. And next morning we got up super early, stopped at his house, picked up the surfboard, and then Leroy drove me to the beach and taught me how to surf. Now, for the next 2 hours, I tried to surf, but man, let me tell you, I suck at this. I usually not very good at anything I do for the first time. I usually get better over time. So, it definitely didn't come to me naturally. So when I got out of the water, even though I was like totally exhausted and it was such a shit show. And I drank a few gulps of seawater, but man, did I feel alive, being early in the morning in the ocean, exercising. It felt so good. Afterwards, Leroy took me to get breakfast, and then when I tried to pay, he said, "Nope, this is just me to you." Now, it might seem odd, but in this community of travelers, every once in a blue moon, you meet people like Leroy who are there just to give and want nothing in return. So we returned to the surfboard. We turned the surfboard to his house. By then, everyone was up, and I met his family. He wished me the best of luck on my trip, and I returned to LA. And just like that. So I returned to Mick's place that afternoon, hung out with him for another day before I head out south to San Diego. So I get to prepare myself emotionally, mentally, and of course, getting the bike ready to cross the border into Mexico. Next time, I conquer my fear and crosses over to Mexico. This is where the real fun begins.